Ford High School Weekly is brought to you by your Oklahoma Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. And by Billy Sims Barbecue. It's not just barbecue, it's Boomer Q.
Welcome to Ford High School Weekly. I'm your host, Deanna Mate. On this week's episode, we're interviewing some of the leaders of the OSSAA, Executive Director David Jackson and Director of Officials Grant Gower. Well, let's talk with them. I'm over here with David Jackson, the Executive Director of the OSSAA. David, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us over.
So how's the summer been?
Summer has been fast.
Yeah.
It's been hot, you know, as everybody else has experienced, but it's been good.
Yeah.
Always enjoy a time to kind of catch our breath and let our hair down for a minute. So it's been good.
Catch our breath in this heat has been hard, but I mean, it's not anything difficult that you don't have to deal with going with everything in the OSSAA. For our viewers who don't know, I mean, what are some of the things that entail with getting ready for the upcoming school year?
Well, our work really never stops even when the school's let out, because we are always preparing for the next year. Again, even probably before school's out in May for most of the schools, we're preparing for any rules and policy changes that would have to go into effect, not only just OSSAA rules and policies, but all the rule changes that's going to occur in all the different activities. So we try to spend a lot of time disseminating that information out to the schools way ahead of time so that they can also prepare for the upcoming year. Planning venues for our playoffs and our championships is an ongoing thing that takes a lot of time during the summer. So it's we don't have any championships or activities like that going on in the summer, but the planning and prepping for all those postseason events and again, probably the changes in rules and policies dominate most of what we do in the summer.
You mentioned that another thing during the summer that you guys have to really focus on is getting venues and places scheduled for championships and big time events. So when does this kind of take place? Is it something that you're scheduling for the next upcoming year, or is it like kind of 2 years in advance, a place for that specific time? Like, is it right now or in the future?
The answer would be yes. there are some venues that we will try to secure on a yearly basis, and we'll take some time in the summer when we can to secure those sites. A lot of times we have to wait until school's in session. A lot of the schools themselves who might serve as hosts, they may not know whether or not they can host playoff activities for us. Generally, what we try to find during that dead time are those championship venues. A lot of times those that we've used in the past, we just confirm that, hey, you're going to be available again for us, hopefully, and we try to secure those as best we can. We do have some that we try to schedule for maybe on a 2 or 3 year basis. You know, we'll enter into a long-term agreement with some venues, you know, much like we've done at ORU, for instance, for 5A, 6A basketball. Our small school basketball, we're currently in a contract at the fairgrounds, as we've been for many years. Basketball that's moved from ORU to OU, we've entered into a 3-year agreement with them a year ago. So we try to, where we can, schedule and enter into those kind of agreements on a long-term basis where we can. But then for a lot of the activities, it's done on a yearly basis, and we do try to, as best we can, get those secured during our downtime.
Coming up next on Ford High School Weekly, we got more with David Jackson, the Executive Director of the OSSAA. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. We're talking with David Jackson, the Executive Director of the OSSAA. All right, so This year, we've had a kind of a big reclassify situation with Bixby moving from 6A2 to 6A1. So how does that kind of work in your situation?
Okay. Well, in most of our activities, we reclassify schools on a yearly basis. We get their ADM numbers from what they've turned into the State Department at the end of the school year in May, and we use those numbers to place schools in the defined classes that we've got established. Again, most of those occur on a yearly basis. Football, soccer, some classes of baseball and softball are done on a 2-year basis. That we'll do that. But for as you mentioned in the example you give, Bixby football. We do that on a 2-year basis. So we'll take the numbers, again, that they've turned in, we'll place them in a classification. And in their case, they're going to be there for at least 2 years. And then next time that cycle rolls around, we'll look at those numbers again. We've got the defined numbers set, Division I football, for instance, in 6A, 16 teams. So we're going to take those top 16 teams according to ADM and place them in that class. So that's how that comes about for football. Again, for basketball, for instance, we're going to do that on a yearly basis.
Speaking of the numbers, student transfers. I mean, we've seen a lot of transfer going on in the college level, especially college football and athletics as a whole. Now we're starting to see a little bit of it in the high school level where kids are moving districts and going to different schools. How is that handled athletically, and how is that something that, is it something to be concerned about, or is it something that happens every year?
Our membership has voted a long time ago to have a transfer rule with the goal of wanting students to participate where they reside, in the school district they reside. That's the whole basis of our residence rule, that you're eligible in the district you reside. And administrators, our member schools who have the ability to change the rule, have maintained that over 100 years because did not want an overemphasis on athletics. For people to move around like what you see at the upper levels to create super teams or just, again, that overemphasis on athletics. That's not what we do at the high school level. So that rule has been in place for a long time. So if someone transfers from one school to another, and certainly have to make that distinction of whether they've transferred or made a bona fide move. When we say transfer, we're talking about a student who's maintained their residence in one district and has decided to enroll in a school in a different district. They still have that same residence. When that occurs, that residence rule says you cannot participate in varsity activities for 1 year. Okay, that's the base rule. Now we look at some of those situations on a hardship waiver basis. If that transfer was compelled by some reason that's outside of the student's control, we've got some particular criteria that, again, the membership has established that we measure those up against. And if they meet those criteria, we can approve those transfers. But basically, a transfer says you have to sit out a year from varsity participation when you make that transfer.
So one last question before we get out of here. I know this is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Is there anything that the OSSAA is doing to kind of mark the anniversary?
We haven't scheduled anything specifically. We are going to spend a lot of time just bringing attention to our female athletes and the opportunities that they have in our schools and participating in our activities, because we've tried to place an emphasis on accomplishing what Title IX was about, and providing, as you know, we've talked about facilities for our championships. Well, we want our championships for our females to be every bit as special in terms of facilities as they are for our men. We've done some things to try to enhance participation in female activities. One being recently adding female wrestling, for instance. So haven't planned or scheduled anything particular yet to mark that anniversary, but we plan to in the future. But more than anything else, we want to send the message out to our schools, to our public, that we think activities for our females are every bit as special as they are for the men.
Yeah, very much so. David Jackson, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure.
We'll be right back here on Ford High School Weekly. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. Now we're talking with my friend Grant Gower. How's it going, Grant?
Very good. Glad to be with you today.
Now, the summer heat has been outrageous this year. How are you staying cool?
Well, air conditioning is a good thing, so we're very glad about that. But one of the things for all of our schools that are out there with all the summer activities, as well as leading into the fall activities, obviously, fall's almost a misnomer because it's still 100 plus out there. But we were able to secure some wet bulb globe temperatures for all of our schools. And
really?
So it's really good. All of our member schools, matter of fact, we've been able to distribute many of those to our schools already, and so they will have at their disposal the ability to gauge some of the heat index, and obviously that affects practices and everything, whether that's from marching band to football to softball, whatever it might be. So excited for that program that we're able to secure through National Federation.
What are some of the things that you guys, as far as officials and the rules that you guys have implemented to kind of keep the kids safe this year?
Great question. That's one thing as officials that they are familiar with the heat acclimatization as well, and even the concussion protocols when we start actually getting in contact. But all that is part of the preparation that they go through, as well as our officials on the field, because obviously for them as well, becoming accustomed to that once again is something that they have to go through as well. And so our officials, that we talk about it continually, is preparing their bodies as well, not just with the rules preparation and the knowledge and with any type of rules changes that are out there, but also prepare themselves physically and mentally, because that's a big part of the officiating process. It's not just what takes place on that particular game night. It is the preparation leading up to that. And that's one thing a lot of people don't know is many of our officials will meet in our local associations, and they'll go through video review, just like coaches go through with their players. And so they'll look at play 43 from this game or play 68 from that game and so on, and go, okay, are we in the right position to make that call? Or did we get this right? Did we interpret that correctly? And all those things, that's some of the things that a lot of people don't really realize. I think there's so many that think, well, they just show up on a game night, 30 minutes before the game, and here we go. It's really not that way.
So as far as rules, are there any new ones that you guys are looking at, especially with the first sport coming up? I mean, football being kind of the thing that's on everybody's mind. Is there any rules that you guys are kind of emphasizing this year?
One of the big things in football that you'll see that many people have seen on Saturdays for many years is the intentional grounding from a quarterback. For many years in the NCAA rule, it has been where if you're outside the tackle box, you can throw the football away and not receive intentional grounding. The National Federation has basically adopted that rule also, so it applies in the high school game as well, where quarterback who is outside of the tackle box can throw the ball away, provided it goes past the neutral zone. With no receiver, he can throw it up in the 8th row, and mom and dad can catch it up there as long as it goes past the neutral zone. That's not an intentional grounding. So in the past, when people would see and hear and see that, many times they was always outside the tackle box and a flag would come out. Well, in high school, that's what the rule is. That is intentional grounding, no longer under the new rule change.
Well, as a former defensive back, that pains me to hear that because you're taking away some of the guys' interceptions out there. Think about the defense now, Grant.
Hey, as a former quarterback, I was excited when that rule came in.
So speaking of the rule, like what's the reason do you think that they've implemented that rule in the high school level?
The biggest one is the safety aspect of it, because obviously, when a quarterback is flush from the pocket, obviously there is some of the situations that can happen with with someone closing the gap and squeezing it down on him as far as what may occur. And so what it does, it just enables that quarterback to maybe get rid of the football a little bit sooner and avoid some of that violent contact.
Speaking of the rule change, the guys who implement these rules on Friday and Thursday and Saturdays are the officials, and we've heard about some of the shortage in officials out lately. I mean, how big of a concern is that for the upcoming school year and in the sports season?
Oh, it is. And football, speaking football primarily, since that's our topic right now, it's not just in football, but it's in every activity that we have, whether it is fast-pitch softball, whether it is baseball, whether it's basketball. It's across the board. We have that there's a dire need for officials. And it's not just in Oklahoma, it's in every state. Of the 51 state associations across the country, each and every one has faced that. Across the country this last year, it's been over 200,000 fewer officials that have enrolled, that we've lost over the year. Part of that was, contributed to the pandemic and some of that, and officials not coming back after that, and just obviously some of that, just the realities of that. But a large part of it is the aging population of the officials. The average age right now of our officials is 55 years old. And so consequently, the need to bring in new officials, whether it's in football or whether that is in any other activity, is paramount. I mean, that's very, very crucial for us to continue all the efforts to bring new officials in, but also retain those new officials. And that's where, it is such a difficult position, because officials are expected to be perfect and get better from there. And even those that you see on the Sunday NFL games, they can go back and look at 18 different angles of super slow motion, high definition, instant replay, and it's still inconclusive sometimes as to what actually happens. Well, in high school, we get one shot, and there are 5 officials in most of our varsity games that they get that one look and may not, that's a very difficult task for any official to do.
Yes.
But that's one of the big challenges that we face. And so anyone watching, all they have to do is go to OSSAA.com under the officials tab, and we can get you signed up.
Coming up next on Ford High School Weekly, we have more with Grant Gower, the Director of Officials for the OSSAA. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. We're talking with the Director of Officials for the OSSAA, Grant Gower. So we've all heard rumblings of possibly moving more games to Thursday nights this season because of everything going on over there at the OSSAA. So can you shed light on that a little bit?
Certainly, Dion, and that's one of the things that, high school football, you've heard Friday Night Lights, and that's what it is. And what is driving and what is precipitating a lot of the thought process is, as we've discussed, the shortage of officials. And obviously, when you get right down to it, is the number of available officials on a given Friday night has dwindled. And when we're at that point where, are they going to be able to play that game or not, that's why there may need to be some alterations to, quote, Friday Night Lights and go to some Thursdays or even Saturdays if that's the case. And so there's been a lot of discussion, as you mentioned, rumblings. There's been a lot of discussion that's taken place with Oklahoma Officials Association, the Oklahoma Football Coaches Association, the OIAAA, which is the Athletic Directors Board, as well as with our staff, with Mr. Jackson, Mr. Whaley, and obviously the football realm of that, of looking at different ways to possibly address that. Unfortunately, we had some baseball games this last spring that were canceled because umpires were not available. We had some baseball games that took place with only one umpire on the field. We had some soccer matches where very few had 3 officials on a soccer game. And so that's kind of what's driving some of that is the shortages out there, and being able for a crew to may work a Thursday night, then work a Friday night. This last year for the playoffs, we had 131 football crews available. And there are 330 football playing schools, approximately 330 football playing schools. And so on any given week, we're looking at 150 football games. Of course, you know, all the math majors out there can figure that out pretty quickly.
Very much
That's
so.
a challenge. And so that's why there's some of that discussion taking place.
Is there any negativity coming from the fans and some of the you know, parents about possibly playing on Thursday or Saturdays?
Well, you know, it's like all of us. I mean, you know, Friday has always been high school football, and that's the goal, obviously. For those that aren't, you know, comfortable or excited about that, we're not excited about that either. But the reality of it is that if it means playing on another night than a Friday, but getting to play,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we are at it. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, in some of the activities and even some of our sub-varsity games on a Monday or Tuesday night, we've had some of those that haven't taken place because of a lack of officials.
Well, hopefully we get that issue solved and everybody gets to play.
I like the way you think, Dion. That would be great. We get to have our games, and if you are interested in becoming an official, OSSAA.com, officials tab, we'll get you signed up in a heartbeat.
We certainly will. Thanks for joining us, Grant.
Thanks, Dion.
Laverty has a little bit of time. He's going back for the end zone, jumps in front of the defender, but defense comes away with the interception and the victory.
Go to YurView.com/OK for highlights. And check out our podcast and past episodes at YurView.com/OK.
Only the best in Oklahoma make the Ford High School Weekly, like David Jackson and Grant Gower. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm Dion Amade.
Ford High School Weekly has been brought to you by your Oklahoma Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. And by Billy Sims Barbecue. It's not just barbecue, it's Boomer Q.